For decades, the Clash kicked off Speed Weeks at Daytona. It was a celebration of the previous year's pole winners, and it was a great start to the season that would give everyone a taste of what they could expect for the duels, for the 500, and for everything else. And for the longest time, it worked, and it worked really, really well. But over time, things change. NASCAR got away from the formula, and different formats, different changes, different drivers, different everything ultimately let it run its course. So, in 2021, Daytona's time on the oval ended, and it went to the road course for a year, before going to Los Angeles, in the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, to race a 3-year stint that will definitely go down as something that is easily one of the staples of the early 2020s for NASCAR. 2022 was a pure success. A huge crowd, great stories, and a big TV number was everything NASCAR could have hoped for. 2023 was a step back. Kind of left year 3 in flux, but it still was something that was a bit of a marvel to look at. A football field turned into a NASCAR track is not something you see every day. But last year was just pure triage, moving a day back because of torrential downpours that would have flooded out the city and the track, and it ultimately killed the event there. Which leads us to what happened at Bowman Gray. By all accounts, this race was a success. The LCQ and heats were absolutely insane. Typical madness from the madhouse of Bowman Gray Stadium. And overall, it was something that a lot of diehard and core fans and old school fans extremely supported. The main was fun. The racing was fun, along with all of the madhouse magic we saw before that, and the energy at the track was one of the best atmospheres that we've seen in recent NASCAR memory for a long time. Even if Fox Sports couldn't play the crowd audio for some reason. Pretty much because they haven't for 10 years now. But what is going to happen now? Now what? Well, there are, I think, 3 paths that NASCAR can take to this, because while it was fun, while the Coliseum was also pretty cool, while the road course was unique, and while the Clash itself has had its history steeped in Daytona magic, well, there is an identity crisis to the Clash. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's more just that NASCAR needs to pick a side. And I think there are 3 paths here. Number 1 is the safe choice. Do what worked. Go back to Daytona, make your core fans happy, add the speed weeks, and then just call it a day. It would please, again, a lot of people who want to rebuild speed weeks, as it has basically been turned into a glorified version of what every weekend was in the 2000s. And I get this one. This worked. This one is safe. This one is what most of us as fans remember from our formative years in the sport. And to be honest, this won't grow the sport, and that is the big goal that NASCAR is trying to do. NASCAR has generally stabilized since about 2018 or 19. It is a sport that is not anywhere near where it was in its peak in the 2000s, but by no means it is a sport that is dying or anything. And when you stabilize, growth is the next thing you want to have. But we have already seen this play out before. We've already seen Daytona have its time in the sun, and maybe this turns into something like the Brickyard 400, where it ultimately failed, but NASCAR brought it back, and at least in its first year, it was a pretty good success. But we've seen the problems, and whether it be the car, the drivers, or the formats themselves, this race has not exactly been the greatest. I mean, look at the last couple years in the Clash when it was at the Daytona Oval. Single file racing and then crashing them up at the end. 2020 was this in spades. So I don't know if this is the right choice as much as so many fans want it. Now, the second option or path is to stay at Bowman Gray. Listen, we had a great start when it came to Bowman Gray having the Clash. Last night and this past weekend was one of the most fun, atmosphere-filled moments that NASCAR has had this decade. And with that, you had some pretty great moments as well when it came to just absolute wildness. And you could probably build off this for a bit. I mean, obviously, you're going to find different things that drivers and teams can exploit, but overall, this is not out of NASCAR's wheelhouse. A short track by no means is something that NASCAR doesn't know how to run. And it adds to the throwback theme that NASCAR's had the last couple of years. I know a lot of people wouldn't want to admit it, but NASCAR has went back to its roots in many ways. I mean, after all, we have racing at North Wilkesboro and Rockingham now, and they're trying to make a push for the Nashville Fairgrounds. These are old school tracks that were the ones that helped build NASCAR, and now NASCAR is going back to them. Add to this that the cost-effective measures NASCAR is taking could be a reasoning they give to staying. After all, it is pretty much a hometown start to the year, saves money, and all of the drivers and teams will probably be able to sleep in their own beds that night, as it's probably only about an hour or two away from where they actually live. It could add a new tradition of grassroots tracks as well for the Clash. They talked about maybe Hickory one day or other tracks like that. And someone else that talked about this in a pretty, I think, great answer was Chase Elliott, who has a history of standing up for these small tracks.
I think it's paramount, honestly. You hate to see those. I mean, historic might be the wrong word, but just that those cornerstone racetracks of kind of what paved NASCAR to be what it is today shut down or go away. So if us having a race or if it's the Rockingham case where those guys are taking the Xfinity and trucks over there, if that's going to keep that place alive and keep it from shutting down or getting bulldozed, then I think that's a victory for motorsports. Like, you know, for whether it's NASCAR or whatever. I just think having these racetracks survive this day and time is a really big deal. And we need to try to make sure we're doing as much as we can to keep those places in business and give us the opportunity to even return there one day, right? Like, what happens if the effort from the state didn't happen and Rockingham goes away and North Wilkesboro goes away and all these places get bulldozed? Well, we can't have special moments to return to anywhere because they're gone. So I just think it's important that we do what we can to make these places continue to be special here in the region, which is obviously has a big footprint with NASCAR and the history here. And I think we can expand and grow and try new things while doing that all at the same time.
And then the third and last path that they could try is the expansion path. Now, this one is something that's already rumored. There has been a rumor for a while now that 2026's Clash is going to be held in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And this is something that I think continues. Other rumors are international dates could be in Europe or even the Middle East for the Clash, which would be a huge culture shock to NASCAR. And the thing is, this path is a hit or miss path. We've seen this happen in the past to great and sometimes not great different outcomes. I mean, for instance, you could alienate your core fan base after going to grassroots tracks and replacing it with what they see as a foreign race. On the other end, you could attract an entirely new group of fans as well. Fans that might be very loyal to you and help you grow just past the United States borders. I mean, after all, we've seen it even in the States where there have been different ways that they've tried to expand, whether it be the cookie cutter boom of the early 2000s that never panned out fully, or the one that did pan out even with all of its problems being the Chicago Street Course. This could be too far down the path, though, to turn back, as if it's been rumored this long and NASCAR officials have been going down to Brazil to meet and scout out, they probably are at least somewhere when it comes to negotiations. And if you pulled the plug for a place like Bowman Gray over, say, 50 to 100,000 fans in an entirely different country that you could add, I don't see NASCAR doing that. Personally, I think NASCAR should try and stick at Bowman Gray for another year or two. If it doesn't work out, fine. They've shown they've wanted to move it. But I think that they also need to just get an identity chosen. Are you going to be the start of Speed Weeks like you used to be? That seems like that's something they're not really too open to. Are you willing to be another event that is like the All-Star race and harkens back to the history of the sport? that could be an option, especially to start the year. It's a nice, safe choice for a lot of fans. Or are you going to have this event be the experimental event, somewhere that goes to different cities or countries and tries to grow the sport? It's a dangerous game, but it's one that could work out in the end. Now I want to know what you think. Where do you think NASCAR should go with this event? Stay at Bowman Gray, go back to Daytona, or expand? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel for more great and fun NASCAR content. Thank you so much to all my channel members for your continued support. And until next time, have a good one.